There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Bernie is back from Jersey City. Bernie, welcome back.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you back. And you are here to talk about your favorite book, a book that is very, very gay and very, very African. And those are two of my main interests in what I read. And I've never heard of this book. It's called One Day I Will Write About This Place, a memoir by Binyavanga Wainaina from Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
We already established that it's a memoir. So I'm just going to let you go. I don't think you need any questions or prompting. You just go. Tell us about this book.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite books of all time. Yeah, it's just really special, and it's super underrated too. This is the hardcover, but there's a soft cover version that I think might be more familiar for at least people in the US where I am. It was out by Grey Wolf Press. And yes, you're right. It's very African and very, very gay, but it's very gay without being gay, because there's no mention of gayness once throughout the entire memoir, which adds to its being very interesting. So basically, this is a memoir of Wainaina's coming of age. And if you can tell from the title, it's called One Day I'll Write About This Place. And this place refers to Kenya. And so it's a coming of age story of Wainaina, but it's also a coming of age story of post-colonial Kenya. And he writes those kind of like those two narratives weave in and out of each other. He draws a lot of similarities between his experience and Kenya's social, political, cultural climate at the time.
Wow. So it was originally published, about a decade ago?
Yeah. I think 2011. Yep.
I think I see it won a prize in 2011. So tell us about the author, because I've never heard of him.
So Wainaina, he passed away either last year or the year before, complications after having a stroke. And
he wasn't very old.
No, not at all. And he is one of the first, if not the first, African writer to win the Cain Prize, which is a prize for African short stories. One of the most interesting things about him and his work, this is his only published book, though he's published a lot of short stories, and some short stories are science fiction. He was very into science fiction. There's one story that's published in the online journal Jalada Africa, which is really good. It's called Bunununus, Little Bit Bunununus, which is a play off of a song by Boney M.
Okay.
Who I didn't know, but some people will probably know.
Maybe I'm too old and you're too young to know Boney M. I don't know, but I don't know that song.
Yeah. And he also wrote a very short essay, I think it's 1 or 2 pages, called How to Write About Africa, which is very satirical.
And it really went kind of viral, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Did you read that?
I think I did, but I don't remember. I mean, I read it at the time or scanned it or something.
This book is very gay in the sense that it's extremely, the writing is extremely flamboyant and flowery, which is really one of my favorite things about the book. It's like you feel like you're almost like in like a dream space when you're reading the prose. It's just very, very flamboyant. And there are so many allusions to his gayness, but like I said, he doesn't say it once. There's no reference to his gayness. And then a year after he published the memoir, he released an essay called I'm a Homosexual Mom, which he calls
what is it? The full title is I'm a Homosexual what?
Mom.
Mom.
Like how British people say mom, M-U-M, where he reveals that he's gay, identifies as a homosexual, and he calls it the lost chapter to the memoir. So you're supposed to, at least I read that as, you're supposed to reread the memoir and think about the memoir and think about the book as something that doesn't always tell the truth and that is open for revision. And it's just really, and actually it's interesting because the very short narrative that he writes about, where he tells his mom that he's gay, is actually also not true. So that also adds a layer. Once you finish reading it, he's like, none of that was true. And it makes sense when the time that he references having this conversation with his mom doesn't add up with the narrative in the memoir. So that's also really
so this is probably a good chance, a good place to make clear that you have done some academic work on this. In fact, didn't you do a thesis on it?
Yeah. So
the things that you've just introduced about the book, I can just see, academic, you're getting all excited because all those things just open up all kinds of stuff for inquiry.
Yeah, no, I wrote half of my two whole chapters on my PhD dissertation on this book. I'm kind of obsessed with it.
That's fantastic.
It's such a good book.
So if he doesn't write explicitly about his queerness in the memoir, other than the supplemental chapter, and he writes in kind of, did you say, was the word you used flamboyant?
Mm-hmm.
What does he write about?
The big thing that he finds in common between himself and post-colonial Kenya is this sense of social and cultural chaos with all of the intersecting identities that make up Kenya. He talks about periods in Kenya's history that center around cultural and ethnic conflict, which, if you're familiar with, any, conversation about post-colonial nations, Europe created borders and didn't consider, ethnic differences, et cetera, et cetera. And so now you have a nation that has different ethnic groups fighting for power. And he aligns that with how his own complex identity, being Kenyan and an English speaker. Each of his parents are from different ethnic groups. His mom's from an ethnic group in Uganda. He also travels. He negotiates his identity as he moves through space. He goes to college in South Africa. Then he spends a long time in the United States. I think he wrote this in the United States. He taught in New York for a while. He recognizes this chaos at an early age, or at least Wainaina, the writer, when he's writing the memoir, recognizes how this chaos affected him when he was a child, and uses that chaos to kind of thread the narrative together, the two narratives, the nation and the self together, and then to ultimately embracing that chaos and using that chaos to identify who he is. And he uses a word called kimay, Kimay, to describe that chaos. And that's kind of like a theme throughout the book, is this idea of kimay.
I think you have done a really fantastic job of selling it already. Is there a really short excerpt, like a paragraph, like just a 2 or 3 minute reading that you'd like to share?
Sean, I'm glad you asked, because I actually have bookmarked my favorite passage. And so
that's
I would
fantastic.
be happy to read.
Do you have anything you need to set up before you read it, or are you just going to dive in?
My passage is a little ways into the page, but I'll just start from the beginning, and that sets up the scene. And it's towards the end of the book, but it's not a straight linear narrative. He goes back and forth in time throughout the entire book. So this is going back to his childhood. It is 1983. I am 12. In 2 months, I write CPE, the National Primary School Examinations. I spend a lot of time in my room pretending to study. I read a lot of novels. I am in trouble all the time with Mom. When I masturbate in my bedroom, I do not like to think about people I know. I know I am in love with Kaja Adams, who is Miss Kenya and who is an international beauty star and uses Lux soap, but I can't imagine her breaking glamour and writhing about. I am also in love with Pam Ewing of Dallas, but she is too good for sex ideas, and she is sweet and cuddly. I hate Bobby Ewing and really hate Jenna Wade. Alexis Carrington of Dynasty makes me giggle when she talks all pouty. This afternoon, while kids ran around outside the lines of classrooms during games, I used a paperclip to break into Andrew Ivaska's desk. Andrew's parents are Baptist missionaries from America, and he has the whole library of novels. Mom won't let me go to the library. I have been itching the whole day to do something malicious, to jab somebody with a pen. Inside the desk is a brand new, unread copy of The Black Stallion by Walter Farley. I put it in my bag between the textbooks. As soon as I get home after school, I rush to my room and lock the door. I am under my orange bed cover. I need 45 minutes before mom comes knocking. The kid in the book is called Alex. He is quiet, stubborn, and lonely. One of those people who quietly go about their business, grittily working, scrubbing stables, loving horses, and not showing off, and depending on themselves. So then Alex is stuck on this island with a giant black stallion, a wild beast that wants to kill him. In his mumbling cowboy way, Alex decides to ride Black Stallion. Alex has decided to want something impossible, and he wants this impossible thing so much he is prepared to lose everything. He will not admit this, so he pretends to make his lust a mechanical problem. He will find fix-it solutions, how to jump on the back of the animal, how to rig devices to keep him on the back of the beast, how to bribe the horse with various tidbits. As he goes about his business in his fatherless and lonely way, rigging devices, we drip with his want. He will not say how much he wants to conquer the horse. We want to conquer the horse. We want that horse more than anything. I want to be thrown, fall on my back, and limp for days.
Holy smokes. We drip with his want.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. That was
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah.
So fabulously gay and post-colonial. Alexa
Oh.
Carrington. I think he and I were the same age because I grew up with Dynasty and Dallas. Yep. I can't wait to read this, Bernie. You have done your duty. You can go back to whatever it was you were doing.
Yeah, I think you'll really like it.
I really thought it was powerful. I get why you're so excited about it. Bernie, thank you again.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm here again with my distant cousin, Erin from Saskatoon. Erin, welcome back.
Hi.
And you were here to talk about a show that I don't think existed when I left Canada in 2009, but has become all the rage ever since. The book is called Best Wishes, Warmest Regards, The Story of Schitt's Creek by Daniel Levy, Eugene Levy, and Catherine O'Hara, and maybe others. So you absolutely loved it. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, I think you have to love the show to love the book. They're interconnected. So I loved the show. Patrick and David are the ultimate TV couple now. They're like the best couple. So reading the book, it talks about the show and the memories, and I may have cried a couple times. It was just, I don't know what it was about that show that hit the world, but
I watched part of the first season and didn't care for it, but everybody said, oh, that doesn't matter. It gets better and better and better. So the clips I've seen from it have really entertained and intrigued me. And I really like the actors. I mean, I'm of the generation where Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, that was the TV show in the 80s, SCTV. And I was addicted to that show when I was a high school student. It's by those three actors and others?
No, on the front it just says Dan Levy and Eugene Levy, but then inside they have interviews and I guess, I don't know, little blurbs written by almost every other character on the show.
And
yeah,
and that's it's limited to the actors, or it's only the actors that are.
Yes, but the book is full of fan art, which I think is so cool. Yeah, like and tons of fan art.
Show
like there's that, and then they give credit to them all on the next to it.
That's a big book, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. It's like a coffee table book. You can't sneak it into the bathtub and read it. And then even like every new chapter about like season 1, 2, 3, 4, that's all fan art too. And then they have pictures in it too of the cast and everything like that. So I mean, it was an easy read because it's
mostly pictures
and blurbs and things that some of it I knew, but I still love reading it because.
So it was the show ran for 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And really popular. Do you know why did they stop?
I think they just wanted to. I think they chose to stop because they felt they were at a place where the stories
Well,
diverged.
there's so many TV shows that should have stopped earlier, so I think probably you might as well quit while you're at the top of the game, eh?
Yeah, and they were considering how many Emmys they won that year.
Yeah.
I think it was Emmys.
Is the book really new? Yeah, just last October.
Yeah, it's very new. Because it's a Canadian book, it costs the exact same in Canada as it does in the USA.
Well, when I was much younger, that was definitely not the case. It was always
It's
much
not
more.
the case now either. It's
Oh.
always much more here. I think because it's a Canadian book, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. So how expensive is it?
It was $40.
Yeah. So David Levy is the son, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's gay in real life. I think that's common knowledge. How about his boyfriend in the show?
I don't think he is.
Mm.
No.
Wow. Not even after 4 seasons of kissing David Levy, it didn't bring him out of the closet.
Doesn't seem like it. Actually, I just remembered something that I didn't know about the show was
Yes.
the 2 main characters were in the writing room. So every time Eugene Levy saw a scene that was written about him, like there was one where there's water dripping on his head and things like that, he said, my son wrote this to like get to me. And there was one where they made him run a far distance and he's like, yep, Dan's making me run. They just have so much affection for each other.
Well, this sounds great. And I don't think we need to say any more about it. I mean, people will either be totally into it or not. I will watch more of the series before
I think you should.
Maybe I'll borrow my cousin's copy someday.
It's on Netflix, Canadian Netflix anyways.
Well, no, I think it was on Tokyo Netflix, but I don't have Netflix because Kenji and I just don't watch enough TV to justify the expense, even though it's so cheap.
Yeah.
Cuz, thank you so much.
No problem.
Paula from Auckland, New Zealand is back with us today. Paula, welcome back.
Lovely to see you again, Sean.
Paula and I got to know each other on the fabulous bookish app Litsy, where she is Centique. This is really going to be a fun chat because we're going to be talking about a Canadian novel that I haven't read and Paula from New Zealand has. It is called No Great Mischief by Alistair MacLeod, and it was published in 1999, and you loved it. Would that be too much to say? Or you liked it?
I very much liked it, and I think the more, when I've talked about it to people, I think I've found more and more to like about it.
Okay, great. So sell us on it. Sell the Canadian on a novel from his own country.
Yes. Well, it starts off, it is very gripping, I found, right from the beginning. Alistair MacLeod can certainly write beautifully, and he can paint a setting and talk about what's going on in a character's mind and use beautiful sentences. This starts with this man who is a successful orthodontist in Toronto driving to see his brother. And as he's driving, that whole first chapter, he's just talking about what he sees and having just little comments he makes about things that are going on in the city. And he sees his brother, who is this very dilapidated, drunk man who's obviously shuddering and shaking from alcohol deprivation, serious alcoholic. And from that point, you're thinking, goodness, what's got his brother into such a terrible state? And then he starts to, the orthodontist's name is Alexander. He starts to think about his past. So then we very quickly go back to talking about his family. And that's where the real beauty and interest of the novel is. The family story is almost mythical. So the 2 brothers have discussed their forebear, whose name is Cullen MacDonald, and how he first came to Canada, to Nova Scotia. So it starts telling a little bit of his story, and it's something out of myth, this incredible voyage, these 12 children he takes with him, the wife that dies on the journey, very much building what the lineage is. So they go through the generations fairly quickly so that you get the story of Alexander and his brother. And Alexander and his brother are a family with 6 children. But Alexander and his twin sister ended up being raised by the grandparents. And for reasons which I won't go into, the older brothers ended up living alone as teenagers, and they had quite a hard scrabble life, and they ended up becoming miners, and very proud, very diligent miners who were sought after for their particular skills. Whereas Alexander and his twin sister, raised by the grandparents, had a much softer life, a much more privileged life, and they ended up having more education and so forth. And both have gone on to some kind of wealth. So we've got this interesting dynamic where Alexander feels some kind of responsibility to his older brothers. Alexander himself is something of a cipher. He's almost a blanked out figure, which is really interesting. And the brothers and the grandparents are the really fully colored people that have got all this rich detail about their lives and their adventures. And that's what I got really excited about. That's what I remember, these amazing characters of the grandparents, the paternal grandparents, the maternal grandfather, the older brothers, and just the things that happened to them and how they believe so strongly in this particular clan that they belong to, and the values that go with the clan, the whole sort of blood is thicker than water, you never walk away from your family, those type of values.
The geographical settings are, I want to make sure I've got this right. The ancestry goes back to Scotland.
Yes,
And
yep, to the Highlands.
Generations in Nova Scotia, and is it specifically Cape Breton?
It's specifically Cape Breton,
Cape
yes.
Breton,
So very much Cape Breton, I've never been there, but it seems like it's character in the story, as they say. You know, they're very, this clan is very tied to this place.
Right.
And so, I mean, part of the story is Alexander taking his brother, the alcoholic in Toronto, back to Cape Breton, basically his dying wish, so that you sort of get this bookends, I suppose, of we start the story with the forebear arriving at Cape Breton, and we end the story with the alcoholic brother wanting to be taken back to finish his days back on Cape Breton.
And would you describe this as a family saga?
So it sort of starts with this really rich family saga, and then it is quite interesting. The brothers are miners, and so at one point during the story, Alexander, who has graduated from university, ends up in a situation where he feels that rather than go straight off to his orthodontist job that's waiting for him, that he needs to go and help his brothers in the mines. So there's quite a big, long section which is really about the brothers in the mine. It's about racial tensions, clash of cultures and brotherhood. So I think there's a lot about brotherhood in the novel. So so the sort of the great epic family stories kind of end, and then you're in the modern world, because this is probably the 1970s.
Am I picking up that you weren't as satisfied with the portrayal of Alexander as kind of a cipher character? The story was kind of coming through him, but you didn't get a sense of him as a character.
Yes.
Is that right?
But I think that is intentional, because I think the whole point of the novel is around, here's this family mythology come with an immigrant family to a new country, and whether that mythology can sustain them or actually lead them to fall. And it's sort of the story of the fall of the family in many ways. And so Alexander is the modern man, and he is the successful man, but he is the least MacDonald of the clan. So that's quite fascinating. And the way that he is colourless, I think, is part of what MacLeod's trying to work through. Can an immigrant family sustain this cultural identity through the generations?
Well, I'm sold, Paula. Your work here is done. You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Chitra is back. This is her second appearance on Bite Size Book Chats, and she is originally from Manipur State, but she is joining us today from Delhi. Welcome back, Chitra.
Hi, Sean. Lovely to be back.
Boy, we have had my tongue has gotten an aerobic pronunciation workout preparing for this chat. Chitra has been training me. Let's see how I do. The novel that we're going to discuss was originally written in Malayalam, and the author is Thakazhi Sivasankara Pillai,
Yes.
and it's translated from the Malayalam by Anita Nair, but this author lived in, and maybe the story itself is set in Kerala state.
Yeah.
How did I do? Would you like to repeat any of that correctly, Chitra?
Like I was saying, India has got a rich legacy and a huge canvas of languages and cultures. So I'm Indian, but the fact is that I'm as foreign when it comes to, say, Malayalam culture or Malayalam literature. It's just that being an avid reader and reading, translated literature, I go on discovering a lot of writings that are being translated. So Chemmeen is a cult classic novel. There was a film adaptation which was as popular and has got, again, another cult following because of the casting, because of the music. That film was made in 1965. The book was published in 1962. And the movie adaptation was in 1965. And the interesting thing was we have what is known as the Sangeet Academy, the Academy Awards, which is one of the most famous, literary awards constituted by the government of India. So the first book to be awarded for the Academy for Malayalam literature was Chemmeen, when it started out. And then we have got what is known as the National Film Awards. Again, it comes under the Art and Culture Ministry, and it's accorded by the government. So the first National Film Award in the Malayalam category was also given to this to the film when it came out in 1965. So that's a small trivia. But the fact is that Thakazhi Sivasankara Pillai's novel, Chemmeen, it occupies a very what I would call it, a very formidable space in the ethos of Malayali culture. And it has made its mark in literature as well as in films, I would say that.
I understand from your review, which I will link to in the show notes alongside your all your social media stuff, that you recently reread it, having read it when you were much younger.
Yeah, yes.
So
I think, if I'm not mistaken, there are a lot of translations for this book. The one that I read, it is a Harper Perennial edition, because HarperCollins India, which is one of the major publishers in India, they started a series where they picked, I think, 10 books from different languages, and then they had this special edition where you see this artwork. Those reflect the language, different language, the fabric of the languages. And the special feature of this series is that in this case, they have the question and answer section with the writer. They also have a critique. There's a literary critique of what the film and the book meant to people in Malayalam. So it kind of gives an overarching knowledge and information while making it very engaging. So for me, discovering it, I had to go back to it because, when you are in your teens and you are looking at the cover, which is a young boy and a girl, and it's about love. So, your mind is set on this, okay, it's a story about star-crossed lovers. So I was a young reader then, and I know for a fact that I was looking only at that angle. Yes. But at the back of my mind, because growing up and when you are, becoming a serious reader and you are discovering more about Indian literature, I knew that Chemmeen was a book that I had to go back to, because obviously, my understanding of Malayalam society at that point of time was not there when I was a teen. So I went back to it, and it's a different translation. And then obviously I'm looking at the other narratives that are there. And in fact, the central narrative is not so much the story of the star-crossed lovers, so to say, but the fact, but it's a commentary on, say, the caste politics that we have in many parts of India. Caste is still an issue in India, where till now in 2022, we still have issues where people do not want to share utensils. Certain communities are not allowed to go to places of worship. Because they are less equal than you are, because you come from a higher caste. This book, set in the 1960s, it talks about a fisher community that's there, and their main livelihood obviously is fishing. The whole romanticism of fishing is there, men against the tide, men going with the tide or against the tide. The story starts out with how the father, and in India, patriarchal India, the father as the head of the family decides everything. So he says that he wants to buy his own boat and nets, because what happens is the poorer fishermen, they pay money as rent charges to take out the boats and the fishing nets. They don't have it on their own. Only a few people who have the money do that. So he starts out with that. How does he go about, getting that money? And there is this boy who belongs to a different religion, and he knows that the boy has got a soft corner for his young daughter. So it is not said, but he knows that the boy will agree to giving him money because of the affection that this boy has for his daughter. But he is not going to allow his daughter to get married to the boy because of the religious thing. And the girl does not like it. She loves the boy, and there is affection between them. There is this whole, synergy going on between them, but she does not like it that the father is using that. And she knows that the father has no intention of giving back the money. So it's about greed, this whole thing about greed. And he gets the boat, and how that changes the outlook of people around them, and how the father himself changes because of his owning a boat. And then, there's so much happening.
It sounds really fascinating. And I remember from your review that you saw a lot of things about gender on your second readings. You described the loneliness of the female characters.
Yes. In the sense that here, like the fishermen, there is this whole belief system that is there, that they say that when the men goes to the ocean, the woman should be virtuous. She should be chaste. She should be virtuous, and only her virtuousness is going to keep, the gods happy, and it will ensure the safety of the men who will then come back with a good catch of fish. So that is actually a way of putting on the entire burden of the morality, upholding the morality of a society onto the shoulders of the women. And even though the lore and all the songs is on that, there is this gossip amongst women. Oh, she is doing that with that man. She is doing that, and he is doing that with that woman. So the reality is different. And yet the whole patriarchal nature of society, where the onus of virtuousness, of women having to be pure, is placed, the entire society's moral fabric is placed on the women. So the women are lonely in the sense that the men are out there in the ocean. And when they come back, either they are celebrating with alcohol because they have got a good catch, or either they are angry because they haven't got a good catch, So it doesn't make for good companionship in the homes, and it doesn't make for a happy family because, everybody is either, bearing the brunt of poverty, trying to make a living. And in that process, it's the women who are lonely, and it's the women who are being, closeted amongst, okay, you can do this, you can't do that.
And the author, Thakazhi, is known for the compassion with which he draws all of his characters, including the women. Would that be fair?
He is a fascinating author in the sense that, I have to be very honest, this is the first book that I have read by him. The problem with book readers is that you get seduced by all the new releases that are coming, and there's so many.
Oh boy, I can relate.
Yeah, this book actually has been languishing in my bookshelf for around about 3 years. So this was the first title that I picked. So I was like, okay, I've got to do this. And now, because it was so fascinating, like I said, when I looked at all the nuances as a more, mature reader, then I said, okay, I'm going to look up this author. And he has quite a volume of work behind him, a lot of novellas and novels and short stories. And I'll be looking out for, if there are any more translations of his works, for sure.
Chitra, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean.